I said, if you have a free market, why do you have all this bank regulation and all these trading standards, all these different things you have to regulate because it can cause trouble? Whereas in Islam it says, okay, don't deal with interest, everything else, do as you wish. Islam has the true free market because we don't, what we said, no interest, after that, do business as you see fit. This is a true free market. We don't have regulatory bodies or the need for regulatory bodies when the limits are already defined from the get-go. I'm going to be very quick on the other systems. The judicial system, which is extremely controversial, unfortunately, and it's probably popularized in the press. That Blaise Pascal said, justice without force is powerless, and force without justice is tyrannical. The justice system of Islam aims to protect a number of things. One, the protection of life, protection of property, protection of virtue and morality, and the protection of family duties. Very quickly, protection of property is very easy to understand. But when someone commits an act of theft, yes, it is absolutely true what you've heard, that yes, the hand of the thief is amputated. It's actually true. It's a part of the punishment. However, there are conditions. If the person's poor, then they're not punished at all for theft. If the person stole because they were feeding their family or whatever, not punished. If they stole from an unsecure location, they're not punished. And there's actually 7 criteria, which pretty much means that only those bank thieves from the Ocean's 11 film will get punished, pretty much. And so and there's even a minimum amount of that. You have to steal a quarter of a gold coin for a dinar. The minimum amount is stealing a quarter value of that. Then you can be punished. Underneath that, you're not punished. It's too small amount. And the punishment is not meant to just be a barbaric for its own sake. It's meant to protect the economic system, because in a society that does not promote material wealth as the purpose of mankind to accumulate, you're not judged more virtuous or have higher status because of that material wealth. Then if you go out of your way, and you will have to go out of your way to steal something, it will only be purely for luxury, and there's something wrong with you if you want to steal purely for luxury. If you're insane, that's fine. You're not culpable if you're insane. You do something because of some psychosis or neurosis. That's different. You're not culpable in any legal system. However, if you willingly, out of desire for luxury steal, then there's a problem with what you're doing, and we have to protect society and everyone's property from you who are stealing. And so the cutting of the hand is to prevent you from stealing, because you have to use your hands to steal. And the state instead will take care of that individual. That person won't have to work anymore. The state will look after this person. If the person doesn't have a hand, the state will look after this person and make sure that they're taken care of. However, they will be prevented from stealing again, because why did they steal if there was no reason for them to steal? Secondly, again, if anyone has issues with this, please feel free to come back to me in the question and answer session in a few minutes' time. Secondly, the protection of virtue and morality. Yes, there is punishments for adultery in the Sharia, and there is punishments for fornication. That's true. But what is the requirement to be punished, and why is there a punishment, is never answered, never talked about. The punishment for adultery, its purpose is to protect the most fundamental unit of society. And what's that? What's that, do you think? Family. Yeah. People say in liberal theory that being physically hurt, someone hitting you is the worst thing. You can't be physically hurt. Emotional hurt, no, that's fair game. As long as you're not physically hurting that person, if you do something to make them feel unhappy about themselves, that's not culpable. That's not a problem. But if a man, cheats his wife, how do you think the wife feels? If she loves her husband, she trusted him, she looked after his kids the best she could, she did put a lot of emotion into him, a lot of investment of her time and resources, and he cheats on her with another woman ungratefully. How do you think she feels to have this man do this to her? If she was offered the choice between being beaten up or having her husband, who she loved so much and trusted, she'd choose to be beaten up first. Because physical pain isn't as painful as emotional hurt. And doesn't she have a right to live in a protected and secure marriage? Doesn't she have a right to have a faithful husband? Of course she does. So if the husband does this, then there is a punishment for it, which is capital punishment. However, Now you might think, okay, then how do we establish this person's done this, and how does it work? Well, the requirement to even punish someone with adultery requires 4 witnesses to see it. 4 witnesses. Now, unless someone is committing adultery in the middle of a football stadium, halfway through the game, unless this happens, then how are they going to get punished? How is anyone going to get punished? It's almost like it's symbolic. It's like it's just designed to scare you. And that's exactly the point. It's just designed to scare people, to say marriage is something so important that if it's broken down, it will cause so much trouble for the child who think they're inadequate, that their parents split up, for the child that wonders why his father, the daddy cheated on money, for the child that has to live with a single parent family and might not be taken care of properly, and because you need both parents, the child needs both parents there. The family is so important and so fundamental to the well-being and health of society that this is why Islam has chosen to give it the metaphysical value that breaking it requires very strict punishment. You might not agree, but then again, who is anyone to say what is more valuable or less valuable than anything else? It was just your opinion. Lastly, fornication. And people say fornication covers 2 aspects. Fornication with a different gender and fornication within the same gender. Fornication, if you fornicate with someone of a different, the opposite gender and so on, this is bad, and it is dealt with to ensure that people do not, again, compromise the institution of marriage. And secondly, because where is the responsibility in obviously sleeping with someone who you're not prepared to look after them, you're not prepared to have to be responsible for them, you're not prepared to be responsible for the kids which emanate from this. The whole point of marriage as an institution is a formalization of this responsibility. People say today, marriage is just a piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. You've made it into a piece of paper. People might say, oh, I don't have to be married to be responsible to my girlfriend or what have you. I don't need to be married. Oh, that's fine, that's good for you. You've done that, that's excellent. But what if you don't decide? Or does everyone think like you? Do you represent every single person? There has to be some protections for the woman and the man in a marriage. And these protections have to mean something. And if they come into relation not casually, but for a purpose, to start a family, to start the pitter-patter of little feet on the ground and all the wonderful things that come with families, this is why it's viewed as very highly in Islam. Now, the other one is, people say, oh, Islam wants to kill homosexuals. Islam says homosexuals must be killed. And this is horrific and barbaric. Say, well, actually, I'm going to tell you something that's shocking. Islam doesn't mandate that homosexuals should be killed at all whatsoever. It doesn't say that. Shocking. You think, what? Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure that some of them quoted me a very clear out of context verse, and it says that. I say, well, no, it doesn't. Because Islam doesn't recognize the existence of a race of people called the homosexuals. Like there's some ethnic group or something, which you have to give them, fair rights to their intrinsic culture, like engaging in homosexual practice is some kind of culture and worldview. It's not. It's just a practice between, obviously, or a predilection for one person to like someone of the same gender, for example. It is not a race or something, it's just action. Islam only looks at actions. It doesn't look at why you did it, it just looks at actions. It's as simple as this. And Islam doesn't go into people's houses. The Prophet Muhammad said, do not spy on each other. So, quite literally, the only people who will ever be, who could fall foul of the prohibition is people who openly fornicate in public. Again, probably in the same football stadium I mentioned earlier. Now, it's actually this. You can, if you go to the Middle East, you think, well, what about guys holding hands? Well, they really do. What about guys kissing? They really do. Not out of being homosexual, it's just culture. It's just a culture. And so on. But must you sleep with someone in public? This country doesn't allow it. You can't do it in this country. You're not allowed to do it in this country. Why not do we say that this country is barbaric or whatever? Or how dare it not allow the rights of people to sleep with each other in public? Well, no, this country doesn't allow you to do it, whether you're heterosexual or homosexual, and the Sharia doesn't allow you to do it otherwise in public. What you do in your own house, Sharia doesn't care. That's between you and God. If you don't, obviously if you fear God, you don't want to go out, or you love God enough not to do that, then that's fine. If not, then if it's not in public, no one cares. So this is a misconception, and I hope it's been dealt with. Again, you can ask more questions about that afterwards. And lastly, the protection of family duties. When people say there's an infamous verse of the Quran where it says to beat your wife, or whatever, as they translate, especially the Islamic folks. Somehow some folks seem to be PhD graduates in Arabic language when they translate it as beat. It must, or scourge was one of the more wacky ones I heard. And so what next? Torture your wife. So Islam deals with it very simply like this. I want to be very clear. I'm sorry, I know time's going on, you're all sleeping. But Islam has this viewpoint. The leader tries to organize society and look at society. The leader, if the man, the husband of the family, if he doesn't fulfill the rights of his wife, if he abuses his wife, if he doesn't give her the due, she can take him to court, and if need be, he will be punished by the state in public. And that's very shameful, humiliating for the guy. He'll be punished in public. Islam believes in corporal punishment over just imprisoning them. Because if someone commits a crime, stealing or what have you, and you just imprison them, what about their family who loved them? What about their family who might miss them? Do they have to suffer because the guy was just an idiot and did something stupid? No. So Islam gives instantaneous punishments, which can be administered there and then, and the guy can be sent back to his house to rejoin with their family. So the family won't have to miss them for many years. And in some ways, I prefer instantaneous punishment than staying in a jail for 4 or 5 years or whatever, without seeing my family, in my house and relaxing with my family and so on. So this is why Islam goes to corporal punishment as the most efficient method. And look at the prison system in this country. So it is packed to overflowing. This is not even debated. The country that has the country that has the biggest prison population in the world? Do you know what it is? Does anyone know? The biggest prison population in the world per person. USA, exactly. And you think China's got 1 billion people, and USA beats them? Wow, that's shocking. And America also is viewed as the most individualistic and the most purest version of liberalism compared to Europe and so on. Which is that correlation is not accidental. So men are punished if they don't look after their wives, straight up. That's how it is. And you'll see so many narrations of a woman coming up to the Prophet Muhammad, who was obviously acting as a judge as well, and so many narrations of a woman going up to Prophet Muhammad and saying, Prophet, my husband did this, he didn't do this, he should have done this. But you'll see none of them of a guy going up to Prophet Muhammad and saying, my wife doesn't do this, or my wife should do this. You'll hardly see it. If ever, I don't even remember reading it. There might be someone, but I don't remember reading it. I have no recollection of it. So women went up to the state, and the husband got humiliated in public if he didn't look after his wife. And the Prophet Muhammad said that the best amongst you, the Muslims, are those who are best to their wives. The best amongst you are those who are best to their wives. And of course, the verse of the Quran about treating kindness with kindness, mercy, compassion there are so many verses in the Quran which talk about this. Again, I don't have enough time to enumerate it, but at least you get it for yourself. But then, what's the issue about the husband, the wife? What if the wife doesn't fulfill the rights of the husband? Is she going to be dragged in public? Is she going to be subject to possible corporal punishment in public because of failing to fulfill the rights of the husband? No. Quite simply, the state doesn't get involved in the family. What happens in the family, the state doesn't get involved unless there's an abuse occurring, which the woman will report to the state. But apart from this, if the husband says, well, my wife's not doing this, not doing that, and say, look, you sort it out. It's not our concern. You sort it out. You are meant to be responsible. You sort it out. So, the Quran mandated, if you read all the verses, the Quran mandated that the first recourse that a husband should have to his wife, who is not fulfilling an obligation or duty towards him, is he should first reason with her, speak to her, and re-engage her intellect and explain. If that doesn't work, then deprive her of affection, sleep apart from her, and show her that you're upset and she should take it seriously. And it should be sufficient. If you have a loving relationship. In the West, some women would love their husbands to stay with them some time. and some get some time for themselves. But this is the problem of living in an atomistic society whereby you feel constricted by marriage. Marriage is, oh no, marriage, oh, okay, cool.